tried to conquer the seas, and the trophy of conquering the seas is the Cunard line with the most famous ocean liners in the world. During the industrial age, that would be like about the 1840s, the industrial age came around and the steam engine was created. And with the steam engine created, we had locomotives coming around. We also had man trying to put a steam engine onto a ship to go faster across the sea, so you wouldn't have to take 30 days to do trade winds. It would cut time basically in half. So this is Samuel Cunard. He was born in Canada, and that's where the Cunard line was originally founded before it moved to England. And he created one of the first major steamship lines. And his first ship was the Britannia. It was just supposed to be a Royal Mail steamer, so it would only carry mail, but he thought it would be a good idea to include some passenger space as well. So he made space for 115 passengers. And it was very bare minimal. Like, you had bunks, there was no electricity, there was wood stoves for heat. There was no refrigeration, so everything had to be dried. They had cows for milk and chickens on board, so you can imagine that was pretty stinky as well. But it was still considered, like, if you could buy a ticket on this thing to cross the Atlantic, you were considered rich. It had it would go about 9 knots an hour, but it still had sails as well. So if the winds are right, it'd go a little faster. It usually took about 2 weeks to cross the Atlantic on it. As time went on, the Cunard line built more of them. But then the Crimean War started, which was a war between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. So the British government enlisted all but one of their ships as troop transporters. So as that was fought, the ships were used for troop transporters. And during this time, competitors found a way to get in. So places like lines like the White Star Line popped up, the Hamburg Line. And so by the time the Crimean War was over, Cunard was no longer on the top because other companies found a way to get in. So they had to get competitive again. And for their service in the war, the British government awarded them a $2,600,000 loan, which they used to build these two guys, the Urtia and Umbria. They were the first ships too not to have the paddles. They had a turbine instead. They also broke speed records. Also, as time went on, getting there faster, every line competed to get to the fastest. So Cunard decided to invest money in a steam-powered turbine, which would turn out to be very beneficial. This is the first ship they put it in. It was not only fuel efficient, but it also was super fast, 24 knots an hour. Sorry, 24 knots. And it would usually take about a little bit more than a week to get from London to New York. But then the White Star Line came out with ships like the Titanic and Olympic, and to be competitive, Cunard came out with their own version. Same size, just as lavish. And speaking of Titanic, we all know the story of the Titanic. It was part of a White Star Line and sank in 1912, and the ship that came to the rescue to save the survivors was a Cunard vessel. Later on, about 1915, World War II would start. The United States got involved when a Cunard passenger steamer going across the Atlantic got torpedoed by a German U-2 submarine. So that's how the United States got involved into World War I, was the sinking of the Cunard vessel, Britannia. And then most of the Cunard ships were used as troop transporters or floating hospitals. During the interwars, that's when Cunard really started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Ships started getting faster, they started getting fancier. Also, Cunard started its first world cruise, so the ship sailed all the way around the world. There was this ship right here, and that is still tradition, continued today in Cunard. Leading up to World War II, they released the Queen Mary. It was the fastest ship in the time. They had a speed of 32 knots. That's like faster than most cruise ships go these days. Later on, it would have a successful war career and be retired in Long Beach, California. It's still a floating hotel, museum, convention center, so you can still go there and look at it, go on board, stay aboard. Also, in World War II, they were used as troops transporters. And after the war, Cunard tried to rebrand itself. So they tried changing up their style here. You can tell it went for more of the cream. They shortened the smokestack, went away with one of the flagpoles, just had one now. But that turned out not to be such a great way to go for them. So they switched back to the old ways. And during this time too is where more entertainment started becoming prominent on board. Like you'd have shows at night, more things to do. Guys had to kind of compete. And speaking of competition, the jet age came up. In the beginnings, there were still more passengers traveling by sea than by air, but as planes started getting faster and faster, more people started going by air. Both passenger growth was about steady for both going up, but eventually oceanic travel started going down. And around this peak of the time, they created the Queen Elizabeth II. It would go to be one of their cruise ships till about mid-2000s. Then eventually, passenger traffic just started going down and down and down, and this was the only ship Cunard was left with, and they were about to declare bankruptcy. That's when the Carnival Corporation stepped in. The Carnival Corporation owns many cruise lines. They purchased Cunard, and they decided to leave everything that is Cunard. So with this new capital, they built the Queen Mary II. It's a modern cruise ship. It sails all around the world, keeps all the Cunard traditions alive. And now they've developed into 3 strong with the Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth II, and Queen Victoria. And they have one more on the way, and that is 178 years of Cunard.
Wow. Good job, Trent.
Thanks.